Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking with you today about the second half of October and the solar eclipse that we have coming up in Scorpio on the 25th. Now, don't think of eclipses just as single days at all. They have a very wide orb of influence. So we can feel the eclipse energy up to a month beforehand and up to 6 months later. So we're well within all of that energy already. Eclipses always bring with them intensity. We'll be using that word quite a lot again, particularly in Scorpio. And also they can bring more seismic activity at the same time. And we have other indicators of that. For instance, the square between Saturn and Uranus that I've talked about a great deal, because they're both in fixed signs. There's a huge amount of tension with them. They are also a classic signature for seismic activity. So we may see more around this time. And I'm going to be looking at specific geographies at the end of this video. But we do have very unstable geomagnetics right now. Because of the drop in the sun's and the Earth's magnetic field, we have a lot more cosmic and galactic energy, as we know, coming into us. And even recently, we had an X-class flare. That is pretty rare, but we've been having a lot of M-class flares, often 4 in a day, which is really remarkable. So the Earth itself is upgrading as it receives all of this very high level of cosmic and galactic energy, as are we. It's upgrading every cell in our body. But it can feel unstable because this is new for us to move at such dizzying speed in our upgrade, in our ascension. Know that it has purpose and know that it's a purpose for good, for our evolution, but it can be a bit destabilizing on the way. Insomnia, dizziness, etc., aches and pains. I could normally win prizes for sleeping, but often I've only been sleeping 3 hours a night. So astrologers get it too. You know, we all live on the Earth, but see it as evidence of your evolution. So the Saturn-Uranus square I've talked about a great deal recently. It is super important, so I feel I'm banging on about it a little bit, but it is so important. It's been running for the last 2 years, but it's coming to its final closing, dying, if you like, waning square at this time. It's exact by degree in the early days of October. I mentioned this in the last video, and I'll put that video below so you can get more of the detail. But nevertheless, we're going to feel this energy through into November. And it really is the clash between the old world and the new, between centralization and decentralization, between control and freedom. Those are the very broad themes with the Saturn-Uranus square. And classically, when we have hard aspects between them, as we had in 2008, we had the opposition. We had a square way back in September or October 1932 when the stock market was at its lowest point. And so it always has this historic correlation. So in addition, I discovered just last week that if I look at the crash of 1929 in October 1929, it has within 1 degree the exact same north node position as we have now. Now we have the north node at 13 degrees of Taurus. October 29, we had the north node at 12 degrees of Taurus. Now, the nodal axis has an 18.6 year cycle, so obviously we're not going to have a major crash every 18.6 years, but nevertheless, there's some kind of historic correlation with some of the things I think we're going to experience now, because now we have a layering effect. It isn't just the Saturn-Uranus square, it isn't just the fact that it's at the same degree, virtually just 1 degree away from the 1929 situation, but it's also because Taurus and Scorpio, where the nodal axis is falling at the moment, is the financial axis. And as I spoke about last time, Pluto is just grinding its way through those last few degrees of Capricorn, which is to do with big business, big banking, etc. And that can reveal anything that is not for our highest good at the same time. So I think we're going to see a lot, and other things in the solar eclipse chart that I'm going to be sharing with you indicate that too very strongly. Know that it is not just the demolition. We also have new financial systems being created at the same time. So know that, don't just focus on the collapse. Really don't focus on the collapse, because we have to focus on where we want to get to and creating a better world, but know that there is another system, or possibly more than one system, already in place, ready to be birthed. And I feel that very strongly. It's very indicated in the astrology too. So let us look at the chart for the solar eclipse. Now, as always, I have set this for England because that's where I live. This happens on the 25th of October. It happens at 3:49 a.m. Pacific and 11:49 a.m. UK time. So whenever we have a solar eclipse, that is like a big new moon. So it's a big new beginning, if you like. So see where 2 degrees of Scorpio falls in your chart. Don't forget to set a new intention at this time, because it's the perfect time in the month to set a new intention for whatever you want to manifest. And remember to condition it really in the house area where it's falling in your chart. Is it falling in your house of career or family or relationships or whatever? If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to the link below and you can buy a 2-part video series that will help you understand what the meaning is for you with every update I ever do, to infinity. So it's really, really helpful. So 2 degrees of Scorpio is interesting because, again, I'll put this link below as well. It is exactly on the IC, the base of the chart for the EU. And as I say, I did a whole video on this, but that is really indicating some solar eclipses in general can bring permanent changes. So it's indicating something very significant with their natural resources, their land, maybe even their physical makeup as the EU. You know, what constitutes the EU? Because it is also aspecting the midheaven of that EU chart, which is the government and the leadership in the EU. So I think within the next few months, we are very likely to see some changes in that area. Scorpio is a very intense, a very emotional sign. You feel things very, very deeply. It's also the sign of secrets. I think we will see many secrets coming to light over this period. I think we will see a lot of disclosure in the coming weeks. It is also, whenever we have an eclipse, the moon has to be close to the north end node of the nodal axis or the south end node. Here, although it's not shown in the chart, we can see that the north node is at 13 of Taurus, therefore the south node must be at 13 of Scorpio. It's always, 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 always directly opposite the north node. And so this is a south node eclipse, and the south node is to do with our collective past. And it's also what needs to be released at this time, what needs to be let go from us individually and collectively. And so the solar eclipse is shining a light on that. And Scorpio is very linked to toxicity, something I've been talking to Zach about recently, Zachariah, aspect of Dwal Kul. That interview comes out next week, hopefully. And toxicity from our environment, toxicity from any drugs we may have taken, toxicity from our thinking, even. You know, our thoughts create toxicity in our body. If we're holding secrets, deep secrets, that can create toxicity in the body. It also raises, so the toxicity has to be let go. We have to release it. And also this can bring up Scorpio issues around trust or betrayal, violation of trust. It is absolutely linked to big banking, big money, often hidden money, you know, underground, underhand money, that kind of thing. It's linked to investments, loans, mortgages, pensions, that kind of invested money. So all of that is kind of under the spotlight at this solar eclipse. And equally, as I've spoken about in the past, the North Node in Taurus, that's to do with your money, your wealth. It's banking as well. It's very linked to currencies because Taurus is ruled by Venus. And here we can see Venus super tightly conjunct this solar eclipse, this sun and moon. Venus is to do with currencies. We've seen how the pound dropped to a 51-year low against the dollar in just a few days recently. That's partly righted itself now, but I think we'll see a lot of turbulence around currencies, currency values. Venus in Scorpio can also express, of course, as emotional intensity, particularly around issues of control or jealousy or possessiveness. And that's emphasized also because Pluto here is square to Sun, Moon, Venus. Now, it isn't out of sign square for astrologers because really Pluto needs to move just into the early couple of degrees of Aquarius to be a perfect square, but nevertheless it's within orb, what's called within orb. So it's still an operational square. So again, we have Pluto increasing the intensity, have I used that word yet, of this. And again, it emphasizes issues around control, possessiveness, jealousy in a relationship. And it also suggests some fundamental permanent changes, much as the eclipse itself does, around currencies, wealth, that kind of thing. What also suggests the new systems being born is Uranus down here. Uranus is also, of course, conjunct the North Node in Taurus, again, banking, money, wealth, currencies. It is in a it's in an aspect which not many astrologers use. It's a 165-degree aspect called a quindecile or a quindecile. And this is an aspect of upset and upheaval. So again, we have this reiterated message of sudden radical change, Uranus creating upset and upheaval linked to big money, investments, that kind of thing. Uranus is also the planet of truth and clarity, by the way. So again, this suggests truth coming to light, the secrets coming to light. Scorpio is as I may have mentioned, to do with very much, it's digging deep. So it's underhand, underground. Pluto, its ruler, is linked to the underworld. So a lot of kind of murky stuff could be brought to the surface at this time. The good news here is also that Uranus in Taurus is about inventing new financial systems that are decentralized, because Uranus is always representing grassroots up, and it's in aspect to this solar eclipse. So that reiterates the message I was just sharing with you, that it isn't just the collapse of the old, it's also the birth of something new and different that I believe is for our benefit as humanity. Make sure it is decentralized, because the clash between Saturn and Uranus, as I say, we can still see this square here, is Saturn always wants to be centralized and controlled, and Uranus needs to be decentralized. And that's the direction we're heading in, because Uranus represents the future and because it's conjunct the North Node, which is our future collective destiny. So other things to mention here. In the first half of October, we had a T-square between Neptune in Pisces, Mars in Gemini, and in early October, Mercury, which has now moved to here, was actually in late Virgo. So it was forming this T-square. And I described that, you can go back to the previous video, leave the link below, that I described that as a kind of billiard or a ping pong ball with so much information coming in at us. The Gemini is to do with facts and information. It's energized by Mars, a lot of information, facts, detail, but we need to sift through it, if you like, to find truth, because the aspect to Neptune here, which is brilliant for spiritual practice, Mars, Neptune is to do with yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, putting energy into the spiritual. It can create layers of fog or silt, or what's truth, what's not. And that's really the prevailing conundrum as we move forward. Drop into your heart to know truth. Don't stay in the head. The head won't necessarily help you at all here, because there's just too much mental input. And although Mercury has moved on, it's still actually aspecting Neptune. It's in a 150-degree aspect called a quincunx to Neptune. So we still have this Mercury-Neptune aspect. Brilliant for creativity, brilliant for writing, brilliant for imagination, not so good for clarity. Other aspects which are important to share here. We have Jupiter at 0 of Aries. So it's on the Aries point, it's on the world axis. Remember, 0 of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, are considered to be the world axis. And that's when, if a planet is there, it throws issues onto the public stage in a bigger way. It's interesting how many quincunxes we have here, because Jupiter is in conjunct, quincunx, 150 degrees to this solar eclipse. So whatever is unfolding at this solar eclipse that is likely to be in some way related to finance, economics, etc., it is going to be blown up, enlarged, made bigger by this aspect to Jupiter. But that is also suggesting that it is again for our benefit as humanity, because Jupiter is always looking forwards to the future, and it's on that creator degree of that very first degree of the zodiac. What's interesting, if I look slightly further down the pipeline, is that on the 27th of October, Jupiter starts to move stationary retrograde. So 27th could be a day when things are really blown up around the issues I'm talking about, but it then starts to move retrograde. It reverses back into Pisces. Now, you might remember that back in April, there was this important conjunction, exact conjunction between Jupiter and Neptune. And I was saying back in January that because Neptune is linked to the oil price and Jupiter expands or inflates, that there was likely to be an increase in the oil price, and therefore that would bring about inflation, which it did, and therefore it ricochets onto not just fuel prices, but anything that is any goods that are distributed. Now, Jupiter is, as I say, backing into Pisces again. That conjunction does not become exact, but nevertheless, it could again trigger some increases in the oil price and increases in inflation. Sometimes there's a kind of panicky effect of Jupiter Neptune, but really use this to the best of just dreaming of better future visions, dreaming of new earth. This is about compassion. This is about unconditional love. And I think we will start to have great compassion to many beings across the world right now. So always try and express these astrological aspects to their best, because we always have latitude in how we live them. Another important quincunx here is Mars. Mars in Gemini, as I say, is to do with information and facts, but it's also the sign, along with Aquarius, linked to social media. So Mars is quincunx to Pluto. Mars-Pluto aspects can sometimes manifest as might makes right, or assertions of power and control, either in your personal life or on the world stage. And there's often a suppressive or repressive aspect to Pluto. It's very dominating because it's to do with power and control. And so this may suggest some additional censorship in social media. It can work that way. But on the 30th of October, again, looking down the pipeline a little, Mars becomes stationary retrograde. And so always remember that when a planet is stationary retrograde, its symbolism is magnified. So think of Mars as assertion, or in myth, god of war. And what's interesting here is that it is conjunct then to the Mars in the birth chart of the US. Now, the birth chart of the US is 4th of July, 1776. So it becomes conjunct to the US Mars, becomes exactly conjunct 22nd to 24th of November, and also the 6th and 7th of January. Now, that's going to happen every 2 years, roughly. Every 2 years, a person or a country gets its Mars return. So that isn't such a big deal. But what makes it a bigger deal is that the US, you might have heard me talk about, is going through its Pluto return. The very first time Pluto has moved back to its 1776 birth position for the US as a country. And interestingly, I've got a whole video on this. I'll put that link below. Pluto in the US chart is in the house of the country's economy, finances, also to do with the constitution, to do with the values of the country. I even think it could affect the country geographically, what makes up the US and what values make up the US. So this is a whole spiritual rebirth for America that it's just beginning to go into, but it's also potentially a whole financial rebirth. So think of it, Pluto is the planet of death, transformation, and rebirth. So it isn't just death, it's transformation and rebirth. So see it in this bigger context. And yes, we're going into quite a kind of messy collapse, demolition phase. But remember, it's almost like you've designed with your architect a stunningly beautiful house. It's a house you've birthed from love, and it's stunningly beautiful. And your old house, because you've got to build a new house on the same site as your old house, and your old house that isn't working very well, and the heating doesn't work very well, and the systems are creaking, that's currently being demolished. Don't just see the rubble and the dust and the mess. Keep reminding yourself of the vision of your house of love. Go beyond the collapse. That is so important to where we're going and what we are creating as a collective. Really important. Now, Mars, when it moves retrograde on the 30th of October, will stay retrograde until the 12th of January. And remember that it stays in Gemini, the sign, until the 23rd of March. Whenever a planet is retrograde, it is closer to the Earth. So we may feel this Martian energy more, Martian not in terms of extraterrestrials, but Martian in terms of assertiveness, because Mars will be closer to the Earth during this time. It's interesting that Mars, as it's on that station on the 30th of October, is conjunct the Sun, SUN of Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader, and square the Mars in Iran's country's birth chart. So really during this time, step back from any anger, if anybody's being angry with you, any tit for tat and spats on social media. Just step back, take a breath. I said this last time. How important is it that you win those kind of mini arguments? It just isn't. We've got to up our game to operate from love, not operate from ego, and you've got to be right. Because there could be a lot of kind of scratchy, fractiousness, if you like, on social media. Rise above it. We are better than this, guys. We've had these divisions, separations, black versus white, blue versus, blah, for thousands of years. This is the greatest time of human evolution ever. It would be a shame to make a pig's ear of that opportunity. And we are in that right now. So let me just see if there's anything else that I'd like to talk about at this time. Those are the major things, I think, that are really important in this chart. I mean, there's just so much to share here. But if I'm moving now to look at the eclipse path, you can easily find this on the internet, the eclipse path, where the eclipse will be most visible, if you like. And these are often some of the geographies where the energy of the eclipse will be felt most strongly, or in the news most strongly. And the area where the eclipse path is strongest is over Russia and Kazakhstan. It's also visible from Iran and Pakistan. But if I look at it differently by what's called astrocartography, then, and this is really looking at its simplest, if at the moment of the eclipse, if each planet was to leave a shadow geographically somewhere across the Earth, where would those shadows fall? And so if we look at it by astrocartography, the solar eclipse runs straight north to south through Scandinavia, Switzerland, Italy, and Central Africa. It also runs through the northwest corner of South America, Peru, Colombia area. If I look at where Pluto is angular at this solar eclipse, it's running through Russia, China, Thailand, Eastern Canada and Washington, D.C. So some of those geographies, again, may come into the news round about the time of this solar eclipse. Again, it doesn't have to be exact to the day. This is a process. Couple of things, other things I'd like to mention at this solar eclipse is that there's a fixed star. The solar eclipse is very tightly conjunct a fixed star here called Princeps, Princeps, Princeps at 3 degrees 09 of Scorpio. And the symbolism for this fixed star is the shameless liar. That was really interesting to me. And if we're dealing with a sign, Scorpio, that's to do with secrets and truth being revealed, that seemed particularly interesting to me and particularly relevant. The other thing, which I'm going to be talking a lot about, I think, in coming months, is that Manwe, the dwarf planet Manwe, is 2958 of Pisces. It is 2 minutes away from the Aries point. I'm going to stop sharing at this time, so you can come back to me, but 2 minutes from the Aries point. Now, that becomes exact in January 2023. And I'm going to be talking a lot about this because you might remember in myth, Manwe with his wife Vada created the cosmos. Tolkien writes about them in his book Silmarillion. Manwe is beyond the dimensions of time. Manwe, and again, I'm quoting the research of Kelly Hunter. I'll put her link below. She's done a huge amount of work into these Kuiper Belt objects that are way out in deep space. Manwe is the highest archangel, closest to the mind of God, highest source of divine intelligence, and here to execute God's divine plan on earth. Here to execute God's divine plan on earth. Dedicated to the triumph of light over dark, dedicated to world renewal. He created with his wife the cosmos the first time around. He knows how to do it the second. And so because he is going to be hovering around that very first degree of the zodiac with Jupiter for some time, I'll be talking about this all the way through to the rest of the year probably, that those are such powerful symbols for New Earth. Manwe in particular, because it's got a 289-year orbit. So it only comes to that 0 degrees of Aries once every 289 years. So there's something that has incredible promise here. And when we look out to those Kuiper Belt objects that are so much connected to an expanded consciousness, to infinite possibilities, to an ancient connection back to the earth. I'm going to be talking more about this moving forwards. Kelly Hunter and I are going to be having a conversation about this in November. There's such a sense of excitement and infinite possibilities coming in here. Whereas if we look at the collapse, we're looking at contraction. Look up to these exquisite symbols that are helping us to reach out to form New Earth. And not only has this massive evolutionary jump for humanity been prophesized, very long-term, ancient prophecies going back to the Mayans and the Hopis, etc., but it's part of the physics. That's what I keep coming back to. It's not only is it part of the astrology, it's part of the physics. Because with these radical shifts in the magnetic field that are helping Gaia upgrade, they are also part of helping our consciousness upgrade, lift us to a higher state of being. For instance, something I was saying in a live event recently, that there has been a significant drop in the sun's and the Earth's magnetic field. I think it's over 20%. And something that was discovered in the Russian space program was when they sent astronauts beyond the limits of the Earth's magnetic field, the astronauts started to have visions and much higher psychic sensitivity as soon as they left the Earth's magnetic field. We don't have to leave the Earth to get those jumps in consciousness because the magnetic field is already dropping. Isn't that exciting? I find that immensely exciting. And many of you are having, visions, more powerful dreams, higher psychic sensitivity, greater healing abilities, greater telepathy abilities. This is where we are headed, and it's physical, it's physics, it's to do with the physics of light, which is unstoppable. Nobody, doesn't matter what their title, their company, their wealth, nobody can stop that physics of light. The light is the game changer and love is the checkmate, as I said in a video way back. So live in love and know that every thought, every feeling of love you have through your days is adding to the creation of a beautiful new earth. Every single thought, and I might talk about this in the next video, actually, the science of this, but every single thought and feeling of love or joy or abundance or gratitude or appreciation is adding bricks and mortar of love to new earth. Just know that's how powerful you are. We are the pioneers of new earth. Look out and up and create. The future is invisible. It's invisible, waiting for us to act. And we're doing that in every moment. So I hope that's been helpful. I know there was a lot of information in there, a lot of astrology. I hope I didn't dazzle you too much, and I hope I translated it well enough for you to follow. I think November is massive. I think it's potentially even bigger than October. We have a total lunar eclipse on the 8th of November. As many of you know, living in America, that's a very important day. And I think we are going to see a lot. We are going to see events happening very, very quickly. Please keep that bigger picture in mind. The collapse would not be happening without the higher frequency coming in. The high frequency is the cause of the collapse, because by laws of physics, as I said, the high frequency vibration causes the lower frequency to collapse. They can't exist at very different levels of frequency in the same space. So that the cause of this collapse is the higher frequency light. How exciting is that? So know that. Go beyond the collapse. Think big and think in love. Be in love. It's a state of being. God bless. If you'd like more information about my books, my videos, my long monthly newsletter, just check out my website, pamgregory.com. And hope that's been helpful. Bye for now.